Ladies and gentlemen, boys and pearls, welcome to the second episode of the Bearded Purl Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb, and I'm coming to you from my home in Kohler, Wisconsin, in the United States, where I live with my partner Justin and our two cats, Buster and Daffodil. Today is Saturday, May 23rd, 2020, and this is a podcast about the fiber arts with a little bit of cooking, gardening, and baking as well. You can find us on Instagram, Ravelry, YouTube, and Etsy as The Bearded Purl, and I will have links to all of those in the description box below. I want to thank all of the wonderful people that have left amazing comments and feedback on the first video. It has been an absolute pleasure and treat reading those, and it's been so heartwarming, especially during this time. And I appreciate all of that feedback. And I want to thank all of the returning viewers and welcome all new viewers, and can't wait to share this week's episode with you. So today we're going to be talking about some of the things that Justin and I are doing around the house. I'm going to share a couple of works in progress that I have going on and a finished object. I'm going to share some of the podcasts that Justin and I like to watch on the weekends. That's usually when we both have some free time that we can sit and knit or craft and catch up on some of our favorite podcasts. I'm also going to talk about some stash enhancement, and then at the very end, I'm going to save a little bit of time for a question and answer session. I posted a prompt on Instagram a few days ago asking people if they had any questions for me that I could answer on the podcast or anything that they would like me to talk about. So I'm going to do that at the very end. So let's get started. This week, the weather has been so lovely in Wisconsin. It's finally starting to warm up. We actually had a pretty late spring snow about 2 weeks ago, which was kind of a bummer as far as gardening is concerned. We had a lot of seedlings that we had started indoors this year, which was something that was kind of new for us. We had grown orchids for a few years, so we had this metal shelving unit that we had set up with a couple of shop lights, and so it was really easy to kind of use that setup for starting seedlings indoors. And we don't grow a lot of orchids anymore. They're just really needy as far as a plant is concerned. Each one has their own specifications of what kind of water and humidity they like and light requirements, and it was just too complex for what we had space to set up. And so we do have a few around the house still. Love orchids, I think they're beautiful, but we just kind of kept some of the primary ones that we've been able to keep reblooming year after year, and ones that have done sort of well for us in our environment. But so we used that setup to start seedlings indoors this year, and it has worked really well. For the most part, I think the timing was a little bit different because of such a late frost. It was kind of later in the season, and that put a hamper on us getting some of those seedlings out when they should have gone out, so we had to wait another week or two for it to warm up a little bit. But everything's in the ground now, and everything's doing pretty well after a couple of days of good rain that we had. It was really rainy last week, and we had, I think, 6 inches of rain in the course of 2 days. So there was some minor flooding in our area, and I know that there's been quite a bit of flooding throughout the Midwest, which is the region in the United States that we live in. And hopefully things have had a chance to dry out a little bit. The past couple of days have been pretty sunny and absolutely beautiful. The highs are in the mid to low 60s degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just one of those perfect springtime days to do a little bit of gardening while the sun shines out. And then in the evening, we've been spending our time either grilling or eating dinner outside with a little fire going in our chimenea. So it's been really nice to spend some time outside and get some sunshine, and yeah, so it's been good to get out in the garden. We've been turning the back garden beds in our yard into a cottage garden, so we've been taking a lot of vegetables and flowers and intermixing them and interplanting them, and then we have a couple of different fruits as well. So it's been really neat to see that come together during this time in quarantine. And we have been working from home about 2 months, and Justin is a remote employee for a veterinary diagnostic company, and so he's kind of used to this setup. He has a home office on our second floor, and it hasn't been a total change in work or adjustment for him. Other than that, he's not traveling. He usually traveled probably once a week or at least 3 times a month, and so he hasn't been traveling the last 2 months, and we're not sure what his schedule would look like moving forward in the next few months, but he might be home, working from home the rest of the year. And I have also been working from home, which has been different. It's been kind of an interesting adjustment for us to both be working from home at the same time. And I am a corporate social responsibility professional for a global manufacturer, and I'm a senior project support specialist for our team, and I do a lot of community engagement and nonprofit work with our associates and our engagement in those different nonprofits, and help set up a lot of community connections with our associates as well if they want to volunteer or fundraise, or just get connected with a nonprofit or a charity. It's kind of something that I help manage, and then I help track global corporate social responsibility initiatives and compile them into a year-end report for our team. So I have been working from home. My whole team has been working from home, and we are just starting to talk about like what the return to work situation would look like. They're only allowing 20% of each individual team to return to their workspace at one time, and I believe that'll be starting next week. So since there's only 4 of us on our team, there would be one of us there at any given time throughout the day, throughout the week. So we're just starting those conversations and seeing what that would look like. We've been on reduced hours for about 6 weeks now. I think we'll start to return full-time sometime mid-June, and I'm excited. It's been nice to be home, but I also miss working with all of my colleagues and miss them. And I have a great team that we work with, so hopefully we'll start to get back to that sometime soon. And whatever the new normal looks like, I think we'll be adjusting our working styles, and the whole working from home thing, I think, is going to be a lot more widely accepted and adopted, not just in our company, but throughout organizations worldwide, which is nice. I think that flexibility helps add some balance into people's lives, and that oftentimes we can get kind of overrun with work, and things in our home life might get neglected, or vice versa. So I think this is a good balance, and things that we've been able to kind of achieve from working from home has been great. Our team has helped a lot with the COVID-19 response efforts and relief efforts with our associates and our communities globally, and it's been amazing to see all the progress that we've been able to do and help all of the communities in need with the situation. So so that's what I do for a living. I'm a corporate social responsibility professional, which is a mouthful. Try fitting that on a business card, but it's really exciting, and it's really engaging and meaningful work, and I absolutely love it. So hopefully sometime soon we'll start to return back to normal, but until then, Justin and I have found a good balance of working from home together. Justin and I have also been doing a lot of sewing and crafting for our community members and our friends and family. We've been sewing masks and also making little crocheted ear savers. So I have one that I actually finished this morning, and it's just a super simple, it's a chain of 30 stitches, and then the third chain in from the hook, I start doing half double crochets. In the last chain, I do 3, turn, and then go into the other side of the chain, do half double crochets all the way across, do 3 at the end, cinch it closed, and then sew 2 buttons on. And this just goes behind your head, and it helps primarily with the masks that have the elastic around the ears, just so it's not rubbing on the ears, and it really helps. We've given quite a few of these to our local grocery store, and when I was grocery shopping this week, I saw a lot of the associates wearing them, so it's great that they're getting a lot of use out of them, and we're happy to make them. They go super quick, and we're happy to supply masks to our friends and family and our community as well. So that's something that we've been working on. What else? Haven't gotten a ton of crafting done just because we've been so busy outside and doing a lot of this kind of charity sewing, and yeah, it's been really enjoyable to see all of that stuff kind of out in the wild, and our friends and family, and some people sending pictures to us and using them. We really are glad to help anyone that needs it. So that's been fun to kind of get as much of that done as we can and get that out into the world. And yeah, I will start with my first finished object. I think this is actually my only finished object for this week. I have a finished object and a half finished object to share. This is a shawl, and it is the Typhoon Shawl by Josh Ricks Rubinski, or Geonetrix Designs, and this is knit with a self-striping sock yarn as one of the colors, and then the other is just a solid, or you can use a speckle or something fun that's coordinating with the solid sections. So that's what it looks like close up. It's a really super fun, simple pattern. The shawl starts with this section at the top in the self-striping yarn, and then you move section to section. The striping sections with the self-striping sock yarn are knit in short rows, so they go super quick, and you just zip along. The rows are really short, and I love the way it turned out. I used, for the kind of gray taupe color, it was a Nerd Girl Yarns in the Obliviate colorway, which is a Harry Potter reference, and that was in a 75-25 superwash merino nylon sock yarn that she has. And then for the self-striping yarn, I used a Nomadic Yarns in the Twisty Sock Base, which is an 80-20 superwash merino nylon, 400 yards per 100 grams, and that was in the Knit Folk color. So you can see it's got sort of a burgundy, and then it fades into a tan, chartreuse, kind of acid apple green, charcoal gray, and then kind of this seafoamy blue-green color. And I love this shawl. I have made another one that I will share in a moment, and the color combos are so fun, and it's really great to use up that skein of self-striping, and sometimes you get bored with a hat or a cowl or socks, and so it's fun to utilize that in a shawl. And then the bind off, you actually create this fun little edging with points with a couple of short rows, super simple, and then a garter stitch edge with binding off in your self-striping. So it's got this fun little color pop on the very edge, and that changes depending on how your self-striping repeats are. This one just so happened to work all the way across, so it ended in that acidy green. I love it. I love it so much. This is my second shawl that, like I said, that I've made of it. The first one that I made is in totally different colors, and I adore it as well. This is a fun kind of fall shawl, and I used a String Theory Colorworks for the self-striping. I can't remember the name of the colorway, but I will link it in the show notes. And then for the solid color, I used a Madeline Tosh sock in the Glazed Pecan colorway. And this is just another fun one. It's got interesting little eyelets that sort of switch back and forth depending on what direction they are. And yeah, so that's that shawl. And that is the Typhoon Shawl by Josh Ricks Rubinski of Geonetrix Designs. Super fun. Like I said, great way to use up some of that self-striping sock yarn that you might not want to make socks out of. And then, speaking of socks, I started a pair of pretty simple slip-stitch socks. I just needed a quick little to-go project, or a project that I could sit and knit outside while we were enjoying a little campfire. And I am using Nomadic yarn in her twisty sock base again, and this is in the Homecoming colorway. And I am just doing a simple slip stitch pattern, so every fourth stitch I am slipping every other row, and it just creates a fun little kind of not quite pinstripey pattern all the way down the sock. Yeah, so I'm loving the way it's turning out. Normally I would say I tend to knit contrasting heels and toes in my socks just because I love it and I think it's a lot of fun. But I decided to just totally go with the same yarn and use up as much as I can. Sometimes I'm left with enough yarn to make another pair of socks, and I just want to use up as much as I can of this ball. And so that's the first sock. That's the half finished one. And then I have my other one that I started, and I am about halfway done with my leg of my sock, and I really enjoy this yarn for socks. Not only does Nomadic Yarns have amazing colors, but the base is great. It's very durable, and the saturation in her colors and her stripes are amazing. I love a self-striping sock yarn that has really saturated stripes that show off really well in anything that you make. I just think it's a lot of fun. Not that I don't use pastel self-striping, but I think if you're going to buy a self-striping sock yarn, you want it to be bold and you want to see the stripes. So that's the second one that I've got working on right now. I love to have it where all of my self-striping socks match up. So one little trick that I do is I pull out enough yarn until I get to a new color repeat, and then I make a slip knot at the very joint of those two colors and then cast on. So what that would mean is, for instance, in this yarn section right here where the dark gray and the light gray meet, I would make the slip knot in the middle right here, and then I would cast on, starting with my ball of yarn. And so I'll have just a fun little edge in the previous color, and then I'll be able to start a full repeat, and that really helps with getting the socks to match in the self-striping yarn. And just a personal preference, I know a lot of people just tend to knit and knit, which is not a problem, but I like them to be really matchy. So yeah, so I have my two socks. I don't have a pattern for this. I might write it up. I don't know yet. Let me know if you guys would be interested in just a super simple sock pattern. I've got a really fun anatomical toe that I've kind of written up for a top down, and yeah, so I think I might write it up. So let me know if you guys would like to see that pattern. And that is in my Wuthering Sheep bag. It's a fun little sock sack in a kind of like a chubby little hummingbird. We love the birds that we see throughout the different seasons here in Wisconsin, and so with the warm weather, the kind of spring summer birds are just starting to arrive, and so we're seeing some hummingbirds and some Baltimore orioles and some rose-breasted grosbeaks. We did see a indigo bunting a couple of days ago. It's a little early for us, and so hopefully in the next couple of days we'll see a couple more of them, and then we'll also see scarlet tanagers. So we love to feed the birds, and we love seeing the birds. The whole edge of our neighborhood is surrounded by a wildlife preserve, so we get a lot of wildlife and different animals and birds throughout the different seasons. So it's been great to see all of the spring birds come. The next project that I showed last week is my throw-over pullover, and that's by Andrea Mowry. Absolutely fabulous pattern. It's really well written, pretty simple to follow along with. It is a yoked sweater, so what that means is the construction of the top of the sweater in the colorwork section is yoked, and that means that the increases are spread evenly throughout the rows, whereas if it was a raglan, the increases would primarily be at the shoulders. So it would be at the shoulder seam on the front and the back, and then you increase down, or vice versa, whether you're knitting a top up or a bottom down sweater, it would just be the reverse. And this is a top down. I am knitting mine out of Jill Draper in the Empire base, and that's the main kind of taupey tan color. It's a super awesome, more rustic feeling rambouillet. It's 100% rambouillet, and it's naturally dyed. Super fun to knit with. And then the colors in the yoke are all different hand spuns. I am one of those people that used to be afraid of using my hand spun in a project because I loved to admire it in the skein and just didn't know what the perfect project was for some hand spun. But I'm just taking that leap and starting to use some of our stuff, and I really love the way it's turning out. I think it was a perfect application to highlight the different spinning and the different yarns that we had spun. So the top color here is a bee mice elf. She is no longer dying. but sometimes you can find a few braids of fiber floating around on a Ravelry D-stash, and that's actually how I got the other braid that I'll show you in a moment. But the top one is a Be Myself, and that is a superwash merino and silk. Justin had spun that one, and it was about a fingering weight yarn, so I had to hold that double to get the right gauge in this sweater. Then the next yarn, the kind of foresty emerald green in the middle there, is a 100% micro 17 micron, it was an 18 micron. I can't remember the micron count, but it was a super fine merino, not superwash. So it was just a really soft, fluffy merino that we had spun, and that was a little bit lighter as well. So it wasn't quite as light as a fingering weight, but it wasn't quite as heavy as a sport weight. It was kind of a in between. So I did have to hold that double as well. So it's a little bit thicker. And then the darker kind of blue teal section here is a hand spun that I spun up a long time ago, and it was a 25% equal parts merino, camel, silk, and alpaca. So it's a little bit fuzzy, and it's got kind of a fun halo, so I'll show you that. But beautiful way to use up some hand spun. Highly enjoy it. The pattern is really fun, and it just flies off of your needles once you get past this colorwork section and divide for your sleeves. Lickety split. I bound off for my body. Last time we podcasted, I was just at the division for the sleeves and the body, so I got past that, and I've started my first sleeve. So a couple of you had questions as to how I add circumference in my sleeves. I was talking about last week how sometimes in unisex patterns or in patterns that are tagged for the female body shape, that sometimes the sleeves aren't deep enough, or there isn't enough circumference in the sleeve that I like personally. So how I added some extra room was in the backwards loop cast on. After you divide for the sleeves and the body, I added 2 extra stitches there. I figured I needed a total of 4 extras, so I wanted to divide that in between the cast on for the body, and then also in picking those stitches up in the corners of the work. So in the body, I added the extra 2 stitches in the cast on, and then I knit a row and then immediately decreased those, because I didn't need to add the extra 2 stitches on each side for the body of the sweater. I just needed it for the sleeve. So I just wanted to get rid of those after I had them established here. And then I picked up in the corners the stitches, not only to help close the gap, but also to add the 2 extras that I needed. So I determined that I needed about 4 extra stitches just from my gauge in the sweater. So I wanted to add about an extra inch in width, or circumference per se, and that was about 4 stitches. So super fun. I'm also not going to decrease it as fast on the sleeve going down. I was supposed to decrease already at the first row, and then also at 1.5 inches, but I'm going to wait until probably about 3 inches before I start decreasing, just to again give a little more room in the arm and the elbow area of the pattern. So absolutely love it. I hope to have it finished the next time we podcast. It's a little bit heavier of a sweater. This Jill Draper yarn is very dense. I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah, it's a nice tighter spun, but it's heavier yarn, so definitely a heavier worsted weight for sure. So it'll be great come fall and winter time. I think it'll be a great addition to the wardrobe. Absolutely loved it. It does have short rows on the back, so short rows in sweaters help them lay flatter on your body. So people aren't naturally shaped flat in the front and the back. So if you imagine putting a sweater on, and sometimes the back of it might ride up a little bit, or the front of it might ride up a little bit funny, and the reason for that is there isn't short row shaping. So the short row shaping helps it lay a little bit flatter on your body, depending on whether it's bust shaping, back shaping, or any sort of other body shaping that you need to adjust for in the pattern, or for your individual body shape. So the back shaping helps it add a couple of extra rows in the back to make it a little bit longer, so it lays nice and flat. So that is done after your colorwork section down here at the bottom of the yoke. and it just goes around a couple of times to add that little bit of extra length. And it's a great addition in any sweater that you're making or any garment if it's not super fitted. You don't have to worry about it, but if it's a more fitted and not boxy type garment, then consider adding a couple of short rows. You can even do it at the beginning of the neck area. I know that sometimes people like to do it up there because it lays a little bit nicer for the pattern that they're working on, but this one had it right at the very bottom of the colorwork section, and it worked great. And you just have to trust that it's going to work out, because it will. Sometimes it's a little confusing, but it always works out, and I love it. So I might make another one of those sometime and use up the other hand spuns that we've got. It's great. So here is the merino silk, and that, like I said, that was in kind of a fingering weight yarn, so I didn't have to hold that double. But there's that color. Then this is that foresty green, which also has some of that blue in it, which was a perfect kind of transition color. And then my third colored yarn was the darker bluey teal. And again, so it just ended up working perfectly how the different colors sort of played off of each other in the different skeins of yarn. We had these skeins sitting around for a while, and I just thought, you know what, I love them together and never thought of pairing them together in a knit item, so let's use them. So I did, and I'm really happy with the results, and I can't wait to wear that come cooler weather. And that is housed in my Fat Squirrel Fibers bag. Fat Squirrel Fibers is Amy Beth of the Fat Squirrel Podcast. Absolutely adore her and love her bags. She had a recent update with National Park bags, and I ended up getting one of those, and I'll show you. It's actually holding my next sweater. So the next sweater I'm working on is a fingering weight cardigan. I absolutely love cardigans and tend to wear them as a layering piece throughout most of the year. I tend to get a little cold, especially in air conditioning, so I wanted to add a couple of fingering weight garments to my wardrobe and wanted to knit this cardigan for a long time. So this is the Longfellow cardigan by Michelle Wang for Brooklyn Tweed, and it's a pieced garment, so that means you knit the fronts, the back, the sleeves all separately, block them, seam them together, and then you pick up the stitches for your button band. So that's that pattern, and I have finished the back of my sweater. So there's the back. And this is out of the Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is what the pattern calls for, which is their fingering weight, and I'm using the colorway Hayloft. And you can see it's all of the Brooklyn Tweed yarns. I absolutely adore the colors. They have such a depth to them that I think is so amazing when you're knitting or crocheting a project, especially a garment. I just think it adds such a depth and richness to whatever you're making beyond the pattern itself. So this is kind of an antique-y gold color. This is more accurate as far as the color, but it's got flecks of yellow and brown and orange, and really love it. And it's a super nice yarn to knit with. It's a little bit delicate, so you have to kind of adjust your tension a little bit to reflect that and not pull it too hard. I mean, you can snap it pretty easily, but once it's washed and bloomed, it creates a strong fabric in a garment, but sometimes you just have to adjust your tension a little bit to account for that, but I love it. I've made a couple of sweaters out of Brooklyn Tweed in their Shelter, which is their worsted base, and I wanted to try knitting this sweater out of the fingering weight. So I've got my back done, and I am now working on my fronts. I am actually knitting them 2 at a time, and we'll see how that goes when I start getting to the V, the neck shaping, because it's going to have to be opposite for each sleeve or each front. So it might take me a little while to get through that. But so I'm knitting the 2 fronts together on one circular needle, and I've got my pockets in there already. So you knit the pockets first, and then pick them up and add them. And then so once I block this piece, I will seam it down and then add my ribbing. I'll pick that up at the end. And you can see in the pattern, there are the fun little pockets on the sides here. So yeah, it's a great pattern. You could definitely use a variety of different fingering weight yarns. I love the Brooklyn Tweed so much, and I'm excited to knit a couple of fingering weight sweaters. I think they're going to be a little bit more transitional as the seasons go on, instead of a heavier sweater like the one that I was just working on. And that is housed in my brand new Fat Squirrel Fibers bag. Amy Beth and her husband were supposed to go on a trip to a national park, but due to COVID-19 they had to cancel, and so instead they kind of lived vicariously through the trip with a project bag update. And it's super fun. It's got a bunch of different kind of posters of national parks, and the bag is great. It's an amazing size. I've got all of the yarn I need for the sweater and then some, my pattern, my notions. Yeah, and it's beautiful bags. And then the next project I'm working on is actually a spinning project. I haven't spun yarn in a while, so I wanted to kind of get back to it, and this is another Be Myself fiber, and I got it on Ravelry as a D-stash. I love the color green and was admiring her fibers for a while, and then she had stopped dying, so I was able to luckily grab this. So this is what it looks like in the braid. It's a beautiful merino in the variegated greens, and I am spinning that pretty fine. I'm going to do a 3-ply, so it'll hopefully come out to be kind of a worsted weight once it's washed and fulled. I'm spinning that on my Shacked Ladybug wheel. It's a double treadle wheel, and I love it. It works great. The tensioning and adjustments are super easy to use, and it works beautifully. So that is on my Shacked. I'm spinning up the braid, so I hope to have that finished. I'm not quite halfway through it. Yeah, not quite halfway through a 4-ounce braid. I tend to spin a little bit finer and then do multiple plies. And my technique is kind of a semi-woolen or semi-worsted, which means that I let the twist of fiber from the spun yarn enter the web of fiber in the unspun braid. So if you look here, you'll see that this is the nice twisted fiber that would be normally wound up on your bobbin here. And then as the fibers start to loosen up a little bit, this is normally where I'm pinching, and I like to let the twist enter my fiber as I'm drafting it forward. I just think it helps me create a little bit more of an even yarn, and what it ends up doing is kind of creating a fluffier yarn that's not quite as shiny or has as durable as a worsted spun. So in worsted spun yarns, all of the fibers are lined up, and when you spin them, they're in the same direction and they just get twisted around each other. It creates a little bit more of a durable, denser, hard-wearing yarn, and then the effect of that is it reflects light a little bit differently, so they tend to be a little bit shinier, and that's why you'll see a lot of commercial superwash yarns that are kind of on the shinier side, or they have a nice sheen to them. They tend to be a little bit drapier as well. But the woolen spun yarns, all of the fibers are kind of intermixed and crisscrossing, and what it does is it creates a really lofty, light, airy yarn. It's a little more delicate, but still wears really well in garments and other items. But it doesn't reflect that light as much, so it'll be a little bit duller. It actually absorbs the light because it's bouncing through those webs of fiber. So the method that I spin is kind of a combination of both. So I will draft the fiber forward and let the twist enter that web, but then as it enters that web, it kind of crisscrosses. So it's like a semi woolen spun yarn. But I'm loving the way that's working up, and can't wait to get that done. And not sure what I'm going to use it for. I'll probably just add it to my hand spun cube. And Justin and I are both spinners. He has a wheel as well. So some of this is his, some of this is mine, and yeah, it's it's been fun to kind of work on that stuff together. So that is all of my works in progress and finished objects for the week. Now I want to talk about some of the podcasts that we watch and share all of this crafty love. I want to kind of have that as the theme of this episode, and giving back and sharing the love with all of you, and to many other amazing podcasters out there, and makers and crafters and independent dyers. I think it's a great opportunity to take some time and spread that love and that joy, and hope that you all take a chance to go and see and watch and visit some of these different shops and makers. So the first podcast I want to talk about is The Fat Squirrel. I showed you a couple of Amy Beth's bags. She has an amazing podcast. She's a lot of fun. She dabbles in a lot of different projects as far as like gardening, canning, cooking. Often talks about some of the really great books that she's reading, and has a lot to share. She is so knowledgeable when it comes to garment making and making garments that fit your body, and how you can adjust and what those adjustments would look like depending on what the pattern would be. For example, in a top-down raglan versus a bottom-up yoked sweater. She has a couple of great videos on her channel for that stuff as well. So highly recommend The Fat Squirrel, and that's Amy Beth. The next one I want to talk about is Needles at the Ready, and that's Kevin and Ray. They did an amazing shout out a little while back for our first podcast, and I want to return the favor. They're a funny couple. They often share a lot of amazing projects that they're working on, and feature some crafters as well. And they are based out of Connecticut in the US, and that's the East Coast. And their podcast is Needles at the Ready. They have a Ravelry group as well, so go ahead and share them some of this crafty love. And then the next one that Justin and I watch on a regular basis is The Grocery Girls. And the Grocery Girls are two sisters, Tracy and Jody, out of Canada, and their family owns a grocery store and have for many decades. And so they work together, they live near each other, they craft together, and they share a lot of fun stories on their YouTube channel, and they banter back and forth like siblings, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. They're great, and they always feature amazing independent makers, dyers, crafters, so go ahead and check them out. Another one that we've watched, we started watching, I would say a month or two ago, is Sweet Tea No Shade, and that's Scott and John. They live in Minnesota, and that's just the neighboring state from us, and so maybe someday we'll get to meet up, maybe at Stitches Midwest or a Midwest Yarn Festival of some sort. But they're a hilarious married couple, and their relationship and the way they kind of banter back and forth with each other is kind of just like Justin and I, and so we often chuckle and laugh to each other, and they'll say something to each other, and we'll just look and start giggling because we do the same thing. But they do a lot of great stuff with kind of vintage movies or different videos. So they've been watching a lot of stuff with Angela Lansbury lately, and kind of featuring those videos, and they have kind of a movie along, so you can watch with them. They feature that in the podcast for the next week, and so it's been fun to kind of go back and watch some of those older movies and chat about it on the podcast with them. Earthtones Mural has a amazing podcast, and that's Denise. She also has a great sock class, and it's a wonderful highlight of the different techniques and construction of a sock. Denise has a wonderful voice to listen to. She has a lot of knowledge to share, so definitely check out Denise and Earthtones Girl. The Fiber Hustle podcast with Aaron and Chip. Aaron is primarily a crocheter knitter, and Chip, I believe, is the quilter, and so it's fun to see the different fiber arts and textile arts blending together in their podcast, and they have a lot of great stuff to share all the time, and are always working on really fun patterns. So definitely go and check them out. Another one is Gigi Made It, and that's Gay, and she has just this fabula persona around her, and she has an amazing blog where she features a lot of great stories, and often talks about a lot of kind of different things going on in the crafting community, and what that means for some people, and really helps embrace the different diversity aspects of what our community can bring and provide for everyone. And she is fabulous. She loves the color orange, and just has great videos, and has been doing nightly videos with Lolo Bean Yarn Co. And so it's fun to see them kind of chat back and forth and join that conversation like that. So definitely check out Gigi Made It. She has a podcast on YouTube as well. I believe it's just Made It, but definitely check out her Instagram. Another one is the Sticks Plus Twine podcast, and that's my good friend Eric. Eric has just started podcasting again after a short break. He's a great designer, loves to highlight some of the simpler aesthetics, great different construction techniques that kind of highlight a male body shape, and was a publisher for the Rib magazine. So definitely give Eric some love. And then the last but not least, among many other wonderful podcasts, is the Crazy Sock Lady. She tends to do a little bit shorter episodes and has been doing daily vlogs, which have been great to see what she's been working on and what she's been up to, and that's Kay. I've tested a couple of her patterns. In the last episode, you will have seen the Desert Diamonds colorwork cowl, and that was a pattern that Kay had written. So she's got amazing sock patterns, always has a lot of new designs coming out, so give her some crafty love as well. So that is it for the featured podcasts that we've been watching lately. I hope to kind of run through another batch in the next episode or two. I think it's really important to kind of lift up different independent makers and crafters and designers and share the love. So many people offer different styles of podcasting, or work on different patterns and have different aesthetics that we can kind of align ourselves to. So definitely give them a look and share that crafty love. Yeah, so I think now I'm going to go into stash enhancement. I'm going to call it Pearls Gone Wild. I think I did an okay job keeping myself pretty in check this time. I say that, but I ended up getting four sweater quantities, so take that with a grain of salt. After I had been podcasting with the first episode, I had all of my stuff laid out on the table right here in the craft space, and Justin had come downstairs and just gave a stunned, shocked look, and was like, "Oh my gosh, how much did you buy?" And I don't think he quite realizes that I tend to shop like that quite often, but normally I can sneak it into our stash. So normally as soon as it comes in the mail, I just add it to our stashes or sneak it into project bags. Not that I need to sneak it around, but I think sometimes it's just a little shocking. But yeah, so I think I was pretty good this time. I got some fiber. Wound Up Fiber Arts was having an update a week or two ago with some beautiful braids, and I don't need any more spinning fiber. I have probably 4 or 5 cubes of spinning fiber, but these colors were just so beautiful and the bases were amazing that I just had to get some. So if you're a hand spinner, highly recommend checking out Wound Up Fiber Arts. That's Trisha Cook, and she has beautiful fiber preparations. It's in these gorgeous braids. They come in really nice packages. I took it out of the plastic wrapping so it wasn't so crinkly and loud, but yeah, it comes beautifully packaged, amazing colors. So this is the first one that I got, and that is called Nest Egg, and that is a 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon, and these gorgeous kind of robin's egg sky blues. It's a little bit darker of a gray color, kind of the chartreusey green again. And so I got 2 braids of this. This is a 4-ounce braid, and so I hope to do a 2-ply and make some sort of shawl out of it. It is fabulously soft, stunning fiber preparation. It is gorgeously prepped and ready to spin. So sometimes the fibers can be a little bit felty or kind of stuck together, but this is gorgeous. It's ready to spin. Yeah, so highly recommend that. That's the first one that I got of Wound Up Fiber Arts. The next one I got was same fiber content, so that 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon. I also got 8 ounces of this, so 2 braids worth of Earth Goddess. Again, that amazing fiber prep, super soft and squishy, not compact at all, in kind of an earthy, fun color with some pops of that purple and pink and green, and so I hope to do a 2-ply for that as well. Not sure what weight yet. Might try and go for a fingering or a sport weight and do some shawls. Love it. The fat squirrel tends to do a lot of hand spinning, and she always does these really awesome 2-plies where she takes combo braids. So she'll take one braid of one fiber and of one dyer, and then spin it and match it up with this other braid of fiber, and I think they turn out so well. So I kind of want to try that and see how that goes for me. But the next thing I got was 2 skeins of sock yarn from Nomadic Yarns. She was having an update with a couple of the colors that I have been eyeing for a while, and Ashley is the dyer behind Nomadic Yarns. She's headquartered out of Chicago, Illinois area, and that's just a couple hours away from us. I see her at the Stitches Midwest Fiber Festival, usually every year, and it's great to kind of run into her and say hi. But she's a fabulous dyer, does really saturated, amazing colors, and tends to do some fandom colorways or some themes. So she just came out with a Willy Wonka collection. The 2 that I have to share with you are one's a Harry Potter and one is a Nightmare Before Christmas color. So the first one is the Sally colorway from Nightmare Before Christmas, and that is on the twisty sock base, which is 400 yards per 100 grams, 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and that is a beautiful 2-ply. And I love the stunning rich colors. It makes an amazing pair of socks, very durable, nice and squishy, hard wearing, love it. So that was the first one. And then the second one I got was Fleur, which is part of the Harry Potter collection, and that was the ladies from the Tri-Wizarding Tournament. That's their school, but absolutely love it. Again, it has really saturated, intense colors. Even like the blushy pink or the lighter bluey gray, is just very well dyed. The color runs throughout the strand of yarn really well. There's no light spots. Knits up beautifully. And that's again in that same twisty sock base, which is that 80-20 superwash merino nylon in the 2-ply. The next batch of yarn that I got was from Brooklyn Tweed. They were having an Apart Together initiative. So during this COVID time, when many of our local businesses and shops were closed, we still wanted to be able to support them in some way or another. So we were able to do that by purchasing Brooklyn Tweed, and then a percentage of the sales in your order were able to be allocated back to a stockist or a yarn store near you. So we have a yarn store that carries Brooklyn Tweed that's not too far away from us, so I was able to support them, which is great. I got 2 different types. I got Quarry, which is their chunky or bulky yarn, and then their Shelter, which is the worsted. So the first color I got was Pumice, and that was out of the Shelter yarn. That's a worsted weight yarn in a 50-gram skein, 140 yards per skein. It's a beautiful, very lofty yarn. So you can kind of see here, this is a woolen spun yarn. So you can see how no matter which angle you look at it, the color is the same, and that's because of the way the light absorbs into it. So like I was saying with the woolen versus worsted, they reflect light a little bit differently, and just have a few different fabric characteristics that are key. But love working with this yarn. It's amazing to support the American grown and made and dyed and independent businesses around the Brooklyn Tweed initiatives. So fabulous yarns. So that is the Pumice colorway, and it's kind of a great sweatshirt-y gray type color. It's a 2-ply yarn. Really nice and squishy. Blooms and blocks beautifully, really soft. So I got a sweater quantity in the gray, and then also got it in the plume colorway. So that is a deep, rich purple, and it's got these amazing little flecks of fiber that are a rich, bright pink and red and lighter purple and blue. So again, the depth of colors are amazing in Brooklyn Tweed yarns. Absolutely love them. So there's the two quantities of shelter and sweater quantities that I got. And then keeping with the gray and purple or burgundy theme, which I didn't necessarily try to do intentionally, I got Quarry. So Quarry, again, is their chunkier weight yarn. It's a little bit bigger skeins at 200 yards per skein. Recommended needle size is a US 10 or 11, which is a 6 through 8 millimeter. Again, in that fabulous gray color with flecks of white and black and charcoal and just really rich, intense colors. And I think that's something that I love personally, is that I love a color that has intensity, richness, and depth beyond the pattern itself. So even if I'm knitting a beautiful, super complicated cabled cardigan, if all of the yarn is the same color, to me it's more interesting visually if you've got that depth, that tonal look, the different flux of fibers, the different fiber content. So I like that to add that extra texture and that depth into patterns that I'm making or different projects. I think it's a great look. So that's just a personal aesthetic, but love the Brooklyn Tweed. So that's sweater quantity in the granite colorway, and this will probably be a tamarack cardigan. So they have a great chunky weight cardigan that I will probably use to make with this. And then the other color I got is hematite. So again, it's kind of that similar purple color. It's a little bit darker and more on the red side, but beautiful, rich, and you can see it's very rustic. There's little bits of like sticks and twigs and things that kind of are fun and that are kind of characteristic of a natural rustic woolen spun yarn. I think a lot of people have the misconception of rustic or toothy or more natural yarns being itchy, but to me it is very soft, very nice to knit with. And another great thing about the woolen spun yarns, especially at a heavier weight like this chunky, is that if you're knitting a sweater for yourself, sometimes in a worsted spun yarn, like a regular commercial independent dyed yarn, it can get kind of heavy and lay funny, whereas the lightweight properties of a woolen spun yarn like this really allow the garment to sit nicely without getting stretched out or kind of bog you down a little bit, and being kind of cozy and warm. So I can't wait to make something out of this. I might make a sweater or a cardigan for Justin for Christmas out of this. And again, that's the hematite colorway. Brooklyn Tweed yarns are sourced in Johnson County, Wyoming. They're spun in Harrisville, New Hampshire, and they're dyed in Pennsylvania. So beautiful yarns. And last but not least, one of my favorite things that came in the mail this week is a tote bag by Sandy by the Legside. Sandy has a wonderful website and a great podcast by the Lakeside. She is based out of Canada and has started doing a lot of leather works, so these amazing leather pouches and zippered pouches and tote bags. So I was lucky enough to grab one of her tote bags in her latest update, and it's in this beautiful green color. Absolutely adore it. It's a great size. It's nice and deep. The leather is amazing. I can't wait to see how it ages and kind of patinas. There's these amazingly long straps at the end of each bag, getting tongue twisted here. I'm just so excited over it. There's these amazingly long straps at the end of the bags that you can kind of tie closed, especially if your bag is really full. It kind of helps keep things from falling out. But so there's those, and then the inside is just the unfinished leather. It's beautiful. Great construction, amazing design. She had it in, I think, 5 or 6 different colors, and I think next time I would get maybe a gray or a blue one as well. But they also contain these pockets that are kind of a looser inserted pocket, so great for anything you need, and these D-rings that you can clip a keys or any sort of knitting notions to, maybe a notions pouch or a wristlet. But absolutely fabulous bag. I'm so happy I got this. I had set an alarm for the shop update 15 minutes prior, so I would know to be ready and be ready to jump on one of those bags because I knew that they were going to go fast. And I naturally totally hit snooze and canceled my timer and forgot about it. So it was like 11:06 or 11:07 when I checked back in the shop. And I know sometimes within minutes bags like that can sell out. So I was really, really happy to be able to grab that green one and love it. And I think I'm going to use it all the time for everything. I usually carry a tote bag like that into work every day when I was going into work. But I have my laptop and any sort of lunch bag, whatever projects I'm knitting on in those bags. But love it. I think it's gonna be a great all-purpose, fantastic leather bag. So definitely check out Sandy by the Legside, and give her some crafty love as well. So now I'm going to talk about a little bit of Q&A stuff. People had asked questions, and I've got them on my phone here. So the first question is, if you could magically knit something for your 7-year-old self, what would it be? I would say, first, at 7 years old, I might not appreciate a handmade item as much as I do now, or understand the kind of work that goes into it, but I would probably say either a sweater or some sort of blanket or throw of some sort that I kind of wrap up in and get cozy with. I've always loved cozy cardigans and sweaters, so I think that would be a good one. My favorite workhorse yarn that won't break the bank. I would have to say Malabrigo Rios. I think it's an amazing yarn. It comes in a ton of beautiful colors, and the retail for a skein of the worsted weight yarn, which is the Rios, is somewhere between $15 or $16, and it's great. It's super soft, amazing to knit with, makes lovely garments, or hats, scarves, shawls, mittens. Really, really good, a good workhorse yarn. It is superwash, so you can machine wash it. I don't machine wash anything that I make, even if it says it's superwash, just personal preference, but you can wash it. I had knit a sweater for my mom, and she threw it in the wash machine on accident, and it came out beautifully. So you can wash it. I would lay it flat to dry, which is what she had done, but definitely that would probably be my favorite workhorse yarn. Talk about a project fail and what you learned from your mistakes. So if you watched the first episode, I talked about my foray into gauge, where I didn't know anything about needle size, yarn weight, and appropriate usages for those in patterns. So after my sock turned Christmas stocking, I decided to knit a cabled hat pattern, and I didn't quite understand how cables worked and what that construction looked like. So you don't cable the same cable every row, which is the mistake that I made. So I had this amazing yarn that a friend had gotten for me on a trip that they were in, I think, Alaska, and it was this beautiful fiber, gorgeous colors, and so I was making this hat and cabling every row, and it quickly turned into this giant knotted mess that I couldn't untangle because the fiber content was so soft and kind of sticky that it just started to totally destroy itself, and I had to end up getting rid of that yarn and throw it out, and it was totally ruined. So I think that was probably my most epic knitting fail, other than my gauge incident. But again, those are very beginning projects, and I think that especially in crafting, you need to, life in general actually, you need to kind of learn from the mistakes that you make, because that's the only way that you're going to grow. I had a teacher for one of my college courses once tell me that if you find something too easy or you're not challenged by it, you're not actually learning something. Part of the process of learning is being challenged and growing and expanding your skills and your knowledge of whatever it is that you're working on. So I think that was just a phrase that she had said that kind of always stuck with me, and I think it rings true to crafting, especially knitting. Like, sometimes you have to make those mistakes and learn those lessons the hard way to then progress forward and avoid those in the future. So definitely the gauge and the cabling incident were probably my worst project fails so far. What yarn festival would you most like to go to? Definitely Rhinebeck. I went a few years ago with some of my wonderful friends, and we rented a house and spent the whole week in that area of New York and had an amazing time. The festival experience was wonderful. I bought way too much yarn. Actually, the throwover sweater that Jill Draper, this main color, was a Rhinebeck purchase. So I'm finally starting to use some of that yarn. But love Rhinebeck, love the people there, the whole experience, the community, the different shops, amazing. I would definitely say Edinburgh Yarn Festival as well in Scotland. One of my favorite, or I should say dream destinations to vacation is in the UK and kind of the British Isles. So I hope to make it there someday as well. And just experience the fabulous sheep and the moors and the cliffs and the culture. I absolutely love it. So I hope to get there someday. And then I would say any sort of local yarn festival as well. We have a Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival in the fall, and it's always an amazing experience. I also go to the Stitches Midwest. There's also a Stitches West, East, and South, and I believe there's a Stitches United. So they have a kind of divvied it up into different regions across the United States, but it's a great opportunity to learn new techniques, meet new vendors and independent dyers and makers. And if you guys have favorite independent dyers, I'm always looking to find more and experience more. So definitely leave a comment down below on the video of who your favorite independent dyer is, and I'll check them out, and maybe I'll get to get some of their yarns or fibers and show that off on the next podcast. So yes, definitely those are probably my top 3 fiber festivals. What tips do I have for beginning gardeners? Well, I would say first determine what your growing zone is and where you live. That will determine what you can grow and when. So that's always a good one to find out first. Then see where you have growing space available and get creative. So we have a pretty small lot size for our house, but we have a patio in the backyard, and we've taken a lot of the garden area, which used to be lawn or grass, and cut that out this year and made a really big garden space. So we added that, but also we have a lot of different pots and planters on the patio and the steps leading up to the house that we grow a lot of herbs. We grow radishes, lettuce, different blueberries, some flowers, and just intermixing them and just seeing what grows well, what doesn't, and kind of utilizing the space that you have. So think vertical growing if you don't have a lot of horizontal space to work with. And then sunlight requirements for what you want to grow, and then what you have. So we have one side of our house is south facing, and there's not a lot of growing space there, which would probably be ideal for our climate here in Wisconsin, but we do have part of the backyard that is south and west facing, so it gets pretty much full sun most of the day, which is great for a lot of the stuff that we want to grow and we try to grow. But know your zone, know what you want to grow. Definitely check out local greenhouses and nurseries and see if they have classes. Check out local gardening catalogs or magazines. I think a good video or YouTube channel to follow is Epic Gardening, and I'll link that in the show notes. That's Kevin Espiritu. He has great beginner tips and really goes in depth with the how-tos, what works best with either container gardening, raised bed gardening, in-ground gardening, just a lot of great, awesome videos. Super knowledgeable. And then light requirements. That's probably the top tips and tricks. And then what your watering situation would be like. So if you live in an area where you might be restricted for water usage, try and get creative with the things that you're planting or growing to adapt to that. And then vice versa, if you're in an area where you don't have to restrict your water usage, like what can you plant that maybe requires a little bit more water throughout the week, and what your kind of seasonal average rainfall per month is. There's great websites that you can find online just by a quick Google search of like your average rainfall. I think you can even find it per week, but definitely per month, and then kind of divvy that up and see what it needs. So there's a lot of things that you're working with when you're gardening, and you might fail. I've definitely failed many times, and the one thing with gardening is that it takes an entire season to kind of recoup that and take that knowledge that you've learned and that experience that you've gained from the previous season and implement that into the current season or the next season. So just be patient with it. You're working with nature, and nature sometimes can be unpredictable or unrelenting. So just don't get discouraged. Things might not always work out, but just like with knitting, it's not the end of the world. Just try again. It's all about the experience. It teaches patience, and I think that's one of the things that also is true to knitting or crafting. Patience is something that we can kind of all use a little bit more of, and that meditative aspect of it too. All right. Looking through your feed, I noticed that you often go to the opera. Do you have a favorite? Yes, we do often go to the opera. We are season ticket holders of the Lyric Opera of Chicago, which is probably our closest opera house. Absolutely love opera and love supporting the opera artists. We have, Justin and I have this goal every year to try and visit a different opera house. So last year for his birthday in November, we went to the Metropolitan Opera with our good friend Jen, and we saw Madame Butterfly, and it was a beautiful, beautiful opera. Amazing experience. But I would say probably my favorite one, and a good place to start, is more of the comedic operas. I think they are a little bit more lighthearted. The music is a little bit more light and cheerful and bantery, so that might be a good one to start with. But it's the Merry Widow, Die lustige Witwe, and that was written by Franz Leha in Vienna, Austria, and it debuted in about 1905-ish, so it's been around a while. But beautiful opera. It's a really funny story. It's about a rich widow, and the country where she's from is currently bankrupt or going bankrupt, and the country's generals are trying to throw this big party and kind of marry her off to someone else within the country, and then kind of spread that wealth back in and save the country. But it's a really funny opera. She gets into a lot of sassy shenanigans, and she's very witty, and it's a fantastic one. The music is amazing. Most of the artist recordings are wonderful and amazing that you can find of it, so definitely check out The Merry Widow. That is probably my favorite opera so far. I really love German operas. That one is often performed in English. I just think because of the ease of understanding, but also the ease of singing. Sometimes the German versions of things can be a little bit trickier to sing, especially in opera, but I love both versions and definitely recommend that one. Let's see if any other questions. Queen of the Night Tulip. You will often find on my Instagram at the Bearded Purl, or my personal Instagram, which is close to Amish. I will post pictures of our gardening, my cooking, baking. Right now we have all of our spring bulbs that are flowering and in bloom, and we have this beautiful tulip that I found, and it's called Queen of the Night. Let me find a picture for you. It is an amazing tulip that is so dark purple, it's almost black. It's just a fabulous, fabulous specimen, and I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about gardening, especially finding different tulips, is that not only do I love tulips, but they come in so many different colors and varieties that we often don't associate with the spring bulbs, like these gorgeous, gorgeous black ones. Like I said, they're such a deep purple, they're almost black, so not quite, but they're just a very regal standout in the garden that I think are really fun. So yeah, definitely check out the Queen of the Night tulips. There's tons of different varieties and amazing. So again, you can find a lot of those different kind of around the house shenanigans and different projects I'm working on my Instagram, either the Bearded Purl or Close to Amish. So you can also find all of these show notes and everything that I'm talking about on Ravelry, and I will have links to the show notes in the description box below. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode. This is my second time recording this episode. Yesterday was a complete disaster. I spent all day trying to get ready and set up and record, and all of my neighbors were either mowing their lawns, getting their roofs replaced, or their driveways repoured with concrete, so there was just so much background noise that I finally was able to record in the evening. And then with my old iPad and YouTube, things were just not going well, so it had taken maybe 6 hours for it to upload, and then it crashed and the whole thing deleted. There may have been a few choice words and some slight prayer involved. I may have cried a little bit. Justin and I may have argued a tad, but I have to give him a shout out because he was able to help me work through it, and I have started over today with this new episode, and it's take 2. I think it's much better. I have a brand new iPad, thanks to Justin. He really helped with that. This morning it was kind of a surprise, so I came downstairs and there was the brand new iPad waiting for me to help. The other one that I had was kind of old and didn't have much storage at all, so I think that was also part of the issue. But so hopefully this new one will help with the videos going forward. I want to thank you all for tuning in this week. I hope you have a wonderful week and find time to craft and find time to find joy in your week. And I can't wait to see you next time. So thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.